Okay, now I'd like to talk a little bit about what I've learned as far as blessing the sick through priesthood blessings. First, I'd like to start out back in the 80s. I was working on my doctorate at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri, and had a good friend, John Fowles, who was the institute director, and we were working on our doctorates together in educational administration. So one time down there in the summertime, I'd go down there and stay most of the week, and then come back on the weekends. And we were studying there together in the Institute building, statistics. Of course, that's a favorite class of most people. And we were going through there, and he got a call, and he came in and said, "Hey, Brian, sister in the ward in the stake called me, and her son's been in an accident at the emergency room at the hospital, and her husband is out of town. Was asking if he could come down and give her young son a blessing." And unfortunately, I wasn't too happy about that at that time. And because we were right in the middle of studying statistics, we had a test coming up and so on. And I'm thinking, call somebody else. John's busy. Didn't have a greatest attitude, but I said, sure, I'll go with you. Because, John asked me to go with him too. And we had to stop studying. Anyway, we got in the car and drove over there, and everything was fine. And we got there to the hospital or emergency room there. I got out of the car, and we're walking down to the entrance. And the impression came to me, you should give the blessing. I'm going, what? I don't even know this family. I'm from a different ward in the stake. I'm from the Kirksville ward. They know John better than me. And they said, you should give the blessing. So I walked a little bit more and I said, hey, John, I don't know how or why or whatever, especially with my attitude before when we left. I said, the Spirit just said, I'm to give the blessing here. I don't know why, and I'm kind of sheepish to bring it up. And he said, okay. So we got in there, and he explained to the sister, I'm sure she probably wasn't very, I'm not sure how I won't comment on that. I'm not sure how she took it, but he did that, and without me there. And then we came in and gave the blessing. And I was voice for the blessing. And as I remember, I tried to give that blessing as if his father was there. And I felt like I did. And John called me, or we talked later that day or the next day. And her son recovered quickly and was blessed and had no ill effects. And if I remember correctly, because it's been a few years, he was healed fairly immediately. So again, listening to the Spirit, that was a great teacher to me, and to not have a poor attitude when people ask for help, but to go and do and be an instrument in the Lord's hands. And you never know what the Lord would want you to do for him. In Argentina, the latter part of my mission, we were teaching this couple, and they spoke English some, but we were teaching them the gospel, and he was sent to the hospital, and they found out he had cancer, and it was not a very good prognosis. So he asked us elders, he learned about blessings and priesthood blessings, to come and administer it to him. And I think I had a fairly young companion that didn't speak Spanish very well, and so they asked me to be voice. And I was very nervous. This was a pretty big deal to come and bless a person who theoretically, or we'd been told, didn't have long to live. So we prayed and fasted and went there. And I was concentrating so much that I wanted to explain a little bit about priesthood blessings. I was concentrating probably one of the I was concentrating more than I ever had in my life probably, and I just remember that. And I started to explain it to him, and I did it in English. And I started and went along for a little bit, and he said, "I don't understand English that well." And I came out of my zone and I explained it in Spanish, and we gave the blessing in Spanish, and he recovered. And I think I went home fairly quickly after that, and I got a message from one of my companion or an elder that he turned around and dealt well with the cancer and was okay. My mother pointed out when I got my patriarchal blessing, and of course I saw it too because I have the original copy that I marked up here, uh, that I was blessed with gifts of healing and of blessing them. And she made me realize that that was a gift of God. When and I had the opportunity to use this throughout my life, I'll just share a few blessings. When we moved to St. Louis in 1984, Ashley was a young child, almost a baby. Actually, she was just born, yeah, before we moved. So she wasn't very old, and we woke up in that house we had rented, and she was having a febrile seizure. Her fever went up so high that she was having seizures. That freaked us out, and Dion came in and woke me up and got me, and I was holding my baby in my arms, not knowing what to do. And I gave her a blessing there, and laid her down. And one of the emergency personnel got there, and he actually picked her up and held her, and the seizure sort of stopped. Where I had blessed her and had her down on her back was not the proper procedure. And we took her in and diagnosed that, and she really didn't have any problems after that. A little more humorous story to some degree. Kelsey, our youngest, when we moved to North Carolina, she was very young, and she would just was getting in accidents or had to get stitches here and had to get stitches there. We went down to watch a BYU game at the church, and she fell against a divider, and a piece of metal cut her ankle, and she cut this and she cut that. And when me and Tara and Cade went up to do a conference, EFY activities at the conference in Blacksburg, Virginia. No, it wasn't. It was yes, it was. Anyway, while we were gone, Kelsey put her fingers in the door in the bathroom when it was open, and one of the kids slammed it, and it cut off the top of her finger. We got back, we didn't know anything about it, and they were still in the hospital. The kids were somewhere else, and our home teacher was a good guy. He came down and helped Dion get to the hospital that night. But he did us a big favor. He wiped up all the blood all over the house so that when I came home, I wouldn't be freaked out. But she was fine. Her finger, someone else gave a blessing to her. Her finger, she was so young, they sewed it back on, and she was no worse for the wear. Another instance, one of my scouts, Carl Smith, he was playing with his 22 or shooting his 22, and he shot him through the neck. I got a call from his dad, Carlisle. They were a close family of mine. I was their home teacher also, and I still am today, some 25 years later. Went to the hospital. He was in the emergency room going into surgery. They didn't know what they would find, but we gave him a blessing there, and He made it through it all. He had no residual effects from being shot. In fact, I see him today, and he still has a scar on his neck there. Now, lastly, giving blessings. You know, we're asked to strive, and we try to strive to communicate what the Lord would want us to communicate rather than what we want to do. And that's always a little bit of a struggle sometimes to make sure you're saying what the Lord wants to say, and for all of us who give blessings. But it's been about 15 years now. My dad was very sick, and I told my brother, my younger brother, he lived out there in Utah where my dad was, if things get bad, let me know, because I want to be out there with my father before he passes rather than when he passes. And that year he'd call me like in March or April. I think it was March of that year. I was in my office at Ensign Management, our international company doing business in Mexico. And he called my office phone. Dad was good at that. Of course, we didn't have cell phones then, did we? Or maybe we did. But he called me. He just said, cancer's come back again. Just wanted to let you know. And we talked for a while. And he said, I'm not going to do anything about it really this time. So I just wanted you to know that. And I hung up the phone. And I just started crying uncontrollably. My dad wasn't a perfect man, but he was my dad, and I idolized him as a kid, and loved him then, and that was devastating to me. So a few weeks later, we were at a softball game for Kelsey, high school softball. She was on the varsity, and my brother called me. My little brother called me and said, your dad's not doing very well. I think you should come out. So I immediately started calling the airlines to get a ticket and so on, and flew out the next day and spent a wonderful 3 or 4 days with him. And relatives came by and everything, and I was able to chat with him and take care of him and help him. And while I was there, he asked for a blessing. And even though I wasn't the oldest son, which is normally what people will do, he asked that I be voice. I think one of my brothers may have felt bad about that. But that obviously was a tremendous responsibility. What does the Lord want for him to do? He wanted to go. He was done with life and the cancer, and he wanted to go. And one of my brothers said, oh, everything is fine. The doctors say this and that and the other. So there I was with this dilemma. So they came in, and again, I was concentrating very hard. And all of the people who held the priesthood was with me, and I started the blessing. And soon into the blessing, it came to me that he was to pass and to go on to the other side. But that sort of devastated me, that I would be the one to pronounce that on my father. But I knew it was best for him. And I finished the blessing. And a few days later, he passed away. But I was very grateful to be there for several days with my dad before he went to the other side and had peace. I bear you my testimony that the Lord is with us and he inspires us, and that priesthood blessings are true. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.